Hello, everyone. How are you? I hope you're all doing well as we approach All Hallows Eve. Let me know in the comments what you guys are planning for Halloween. I love Halloween. I really do. Um, it's just because it's kind of like it's so fun. Um, and generally there's pretty good memories, of Halloween and being a kid, and I'm old enough to have known when we had these plastic masks with these little eye holes and a little tiny mouth hole. And they were terrifying, let me tell you. So, I dressed up as a witch even then. I just kind of always have been kind of witchy. A witchy poo. So, the COVID is trying to. I don't know. I don't know what it's trying to do. I still really can't eat solid foods. I'm still really, eating a lot of jello and chicken soup, and um I did eat a chicken pot pie today. That was progress. Um my fever has been at 103.3 today without Tylenol. Um so every 4 hours I take 1,000 milligrams of Tylenol, and even with the Tylenol I'm just riding at 102. I just took my temperature. I'm at 102. So my body's trying its best to cook it off. I took a long, long, cool bubble bath to just try to get the fever down. It was just anytime I moved today, it was just, I just sweat and sweat, sweat. I felt clammy, so I was really surprised my fever was up there that high, because I generally run really low. So like my normal is like a 97, so this fever is huge for me. I don't want to tell my doctor, because then she'll tell me to go to the emergency room, and then I don't want to go to the emergency room, and so then she'll be mad at me. And but I just fucking hate COVID. I'm so sick of it. I like I've told you, I think that I had it, when I was working at Target. And then, I definitely had it the time that it, nearly died, 20, 22 months ago. And now this strain of it. And it's weird because they say, in the news that it's like some variant of like the BMQRZ strain. And they say that, you should isolate for 3 days and then wear a mask when you go out. Like, they really don't have you isolating. There's no real instructions as to what to do. And I guess the main reason why I couldn't have surgery is because of the high risk of blood clots that COVID causes, your blood to become. It was really weird when I saw it getting drawn when I was super sick. Um, your blood gets like really thick, almost black and muddy. Some nurses can say that they can tell when you have COVID, because when they try to draw it, it's like that. It's really weird. And like the last time when my platelets were so high, I'm sure they're high right now, so I'm taking aspirin. And just being really mindful of any weird pains in my body that don't go away, and just really forcing myself to move around a lot so that I don't get a blood clot. But that's the reason why they have to schedule surgery 7 weeks out from a positive PCR test. And I mean, in retrospect right now, I mean, I guess it's good that I didn't have the surgery, because if I would have had the surgery and had a fever of 103, we would be thinking that I had an infection in the surgical site, and that would not be good. So I'm just a sicky poo. I don't want to be sick. I'm so sick of being sick. Like I said, I got this September 5th. So I'm going on, 7 weeks of this shit. And it probably started as, the RSV thing was going out and around, and then I probably got another strain of COVID. And I'm just so sick of being sick. But in my downtime, I did some researching today, and I have a bombshell for you guys. A freaking bombshell, because I'm a freaking genius. As far as I know, the research that I'm going to say in my bombshell is not known. If I am in error, then somebody can tell me. But as far as my research, what I've done and made sure that I did it with the Google machine too, to make sure that my research was not outdated, I'm freaking brilliant, and I'll give you that bombshell tonight later, okay? So, right now there appears to be a pile of ass clowns circling the drain. They are all obsessing over the Quentin Simon case. I would ask you all to refrain from watching the ass clowns do their ass clowning, because what they're doing is not anything that we want to encourage. We do not want a society that believes in mob mentality, and that is exactly what they are doing. They are standing outside of the house of the suspect, Leilani, and they are, well, Camel Toe herself joined the parade today, so they've got all ass clowns in attendance. And the problem is that they are making a fuck ton of money, because every time you go to view what these ass clowns are doing, it's giving them a view, which is giving them money, and then they get super chat from people who are like, oh, you're doing the Lord's work by being there, thank you, ass clown. And it's like, no, they are not. In fact, what they are doing is intimidation of the witness. They are guilty of obstruction of justice. And we do not conduct ourselves in the way that they are. Like I said on my other recording, this poor person was just trying to go ahead and die in their home, and they were on hospice, and they had to freaking call 911 to ask to go be taken to a place where they could go and die quietly, because they can't die because they've got these idiots on their bullhorns. Is that what we want in our neighborhood? Your neighborhood could be next if you can encourage these ass clowns by viewing them. And think about another creator brought up a really good point today about, what about people with PTSD? What about vets that live in that neighborhood? You know, all of that noise and commotion. I'm not a vet, but I have PTSD, and if some ass clown was out there screaming 24/7, I'd probably go and I'd beat their ass, because I'd rather be in jail than listen to that shit. Honestly, I would. We won't talk about the example I have of that right now, but just trust me in saying that I don't appreciate a bunch of fucking noise outside my house. And so I think that there's a creator called Deets on the Streets, and I post their footage of the ass clowns on my community page from Deets on the Streets, because what Deets on the Streets does is it takes a tidbit of what they are doing and anything relevant. So if there was anything relevant that had occurred in the 13-hour marathon, Deets on the Streets is going to capture that and then put it there. And then you can watch it, and you can get, you're not giving the ass clowns the view, but you're giving somebody who is taking the time to just go through and make sure there's nothing relevant. If there is, put it up, and then we don't have to give into the egos of the ass clowns. Now, the ass clowns should actually package up their big balls, their big hairy smelly balls and camel toes, and go to the government offices. Go to the Office of Child Protective Services. Go make yourself useful. Protest there. That is the root of our problem. Okay? Of course, the problem is skanks having kids that shouldn't have kids. Okay? We know that. But the skanks having kids that shouldn't have kids are supposed to be patrolled by the Child Protective Services. Now, Child Protective Services was indeed involved in the case of Quentin Simon, and to the effect that Leilani had her parental rights severed. Custody was given to her grandmother. Okay? So when you see them, the gray-haired lady who, is fretting around, the Leilani with the big, I didn't even get to enjoy my son's memorial. Keep talking, bitch. Anyway, so CPS took away her rights, gives them to the fucking grandma. The grandma is a known alcoholic. Allegedly, don't come for me. She was seen last week with Leilani in a restaurant taking shots of alcohol. Well, the rest of the world is wondering where the grandson is. Okay? And the other children were removed by CPS. So, guess they didn't have to worry about kids that night, so they go out and they celebrate. Go take some shots at a local restaurant where everybody can take a picture of their ass clowning. A lot of ass clowning everywhere, okay? It's an ass clown parade. So, CPS took away the parental rights, gave it to the grandma. The grandma had in fact lost custody of her own children because of her addiction problems. Okay? So they should not have given custody to her. Number one, because of her history and the fact that she does not seem to be sober at this point in her life. But the grandma, when asked and said, well, why were you letting Leilani watch the kids if you have custody? Why are you letting her do that? Why did you do this? Well, I didn't want her to feel like I did because I had my kids taken away by CPS when I was young too. Wonderful. Wonderful. Look what you taught. You have a 2-generation at least right there where you are people who get your kids taken away from you and your parental rights severed. And now one probably drowned. CPS should have never given the grandma custody. If CPS decided, oh, okay, we'll give it to the grandma because she has a house, they should have been supervising it and made sure that if there was indeed this history with this grandmother, that Leilani was not being left alone to care for the kids. Because basically what we did, come on, let's read between the lines. We know that Leilani was probably getting child support, right? And she had the babysitter across the street, down the block, whatever, right? And she was taking the kids to the babysitter at like 5:30 in the morning. I don't think the bitch was working anywhere at 5:30 in the morning. I think that welfare was paying for daycare. So most likely the grandmother had a little cash cow set up here in that Leilani would get child support, not from the fathers, from the state. Most likely every other benefit from the state. Food, electric, housing, maybe some Section 8 money, WIC, okay? And then on top of that, paid daycare. So, Grandma was able to afford this house with a pool because Leilani was a fetal factory having babies to get money to pay for the house. Why was this a good thing in CPS's eyes? CPS had received several reports of continued abuse on those children. The unspoken hero in this case, with Quentin Simon, is the babysitter Diana McCarta. She had a TikTok, I guess, and she she was talking about some other chick named Cher. I don't know who Cher is in this game, in this ass clown festival, but anyway, I guess that Cher complained, and so Diana had her account suspended now for a week or whatever, but she has a backup account, and if she can get up to 1,000 subs, then she's able to go live again and she will talk. So if you are so inclined to be following people, I would say that the babysitter was probably the person who gave that child the love that helped the child survive. The babysitter and the daughter, the 16-year-old daughter, had found Quentin and his little brother alone in the street once, and alone in the grandma's pool once. Neither the 3-year-old and the 1-year-old or whatever know how to swim. 16-year-old gets him out of the pool, brings him to the mama. Babysitter. Where was Leilani? Asleep, passed out, otherwise incapacitated. The neighbors report being fearful that those kids were going to drown or be ran over. They were not supervised. Babysitter Diana McCarta reports that Quentin was dirty, always hungry, and generally not cared for. So she bathed that child. She loved that child. She fed that child. And now she is the one who is going to hurt like a mother because she was not out there going and having shots like a freaking idiot. So, please be mindful of who you are following and giving the views to. Like I say, the ass clown parade that goes and gets all this money to go and fly to these situations and then sit out there and become a public nuisance. Why are people paying for that? Why are people encouraging that terrible behavior? That's, like I say, that's a downhill trend that we do not want to happen in our civilized society. That is uncivilization. Do they have the right to peacefully assemble? Yes. But what they are doing on bullhorns and screaming and being loud and out there 24/7 is not a peaceful assembly. It's not peaceful in any capacity. They should go and protest CPS. And I know this may be out there. You don't know, CPS, I have a friend who's a caseworker, and she says that they're really overworked and it's not fair. I have friends who are CPS workers too, and they are telling me straight up that the system is fucked, that they have a bunch of smelly ass twats in charge of everything, and it's all about power, and they sit around on their fucking breaks 5 times a day and they don't do anything. I have several first-hand dealings with CPS of when I have reported abhorrent behavior. And you know what? They don't do shit. And you know what? Then when you call the police on the act of child abuse happening, the police will not act because they say that. They yield to CPS. That, you know what? They filed CPS reports and they do what CPS says. So the law enforcement bows down to CPS. CPS will say, well, we don't know that this is true. What if you're lying? Well, what if the kid is lying? Kids lie. You would not believe. I will tell you someday in great length about how stupid Child Protective Services is. They need to get out there. Child Protective Services needs to get out there and say, we cannot do our jobs because A, B, C, and D, and give an operating budget and say, we need this many workers so that we can do this. We are prohibited by doing this because of this. We are burnt out and underpaid and we need this. Here's your moment, CPS. Here's your platform. Okay? And like I say, the ass clowns should not be in neighborhoods. They need to be at CPS. Let the law enforcement do what they're going to do with Leilani. Right now, all of the actions that they're doing could very easily cause a mistrial, at the very least. Now, when I was talking the other day about the situation with Trenton Duckett, when she was the main suspect in her son's disappearance, the mom, Melinda Duckett, think was her name. Sorry, I'm on cold medicine, so please excuse my, if I say the wrong word, because now we've got a whole new fresh case of COVID brain, so God knows what I'm going to say. But I might say the wrong thing, and you guys are just going to have to be like, okay, Grandma, we know what you're saying, okay? Just go with me here. So, Melinda Duckett, when the pressure was on, she went and killed herself. She told her family that the pressure from Nancy Grace, my spirit animal, was too much, and she went and killed herself. So the location of Trenton Duckett, who would be 18 years old at this point, has never been found. If these ass clowns continue with this kind of pressure, who's to say that Leilani isn't going to do the same thing? And then there will be no justice for Trenton, for Quentin. We know that Quentin is 99% not alive. We need to find that boy and give him a proper burial, because right now he is most likely in a pile of garbage, and we don't want to talk about what's probably happening to him right now. I believe that he drowned and she put him in the garbage. She doesn't look like she's that ambitious to do anything else. I am taking sips of tea here. Let me show you. And I got my Christmas mug out. My Christmas mug from 2004. I used to really collect these. This is organic baked cinnamon apple from Tazo Teas. But this mug is a 2004. And it's just so cute. Yeah, it's a little battered, tattered, and torn. But look I love the Christmas trees when they're like that. Like that drawing there. And that drawing. I love this one. One of my favorites. Almost as old as my children. My twins turned 19 today. My next son will turn 20 tomorrow. Mixed emotions all around. So, in other news, when I put up on my community page or share videos from a person called Truth Seeker goes and finds older videos that were done by Dre McCray. I did a story on Dre McCray because she was in the top 1% of paparazzi jewelry sales. And her chicken, one of her dogs, her daughter, her mother, and her husband began having seizures. And she was selling paparazzi, which was purported to be nickel and lead free, which now is coming out that it was not. And many people who sold it were in fact sick. So when her husband got ill, let's take this out. When her husband got ill, she kind of went on the deep end of trying to find anything and everything that could have caused seizures and to stop them, right? Oh, Lord, come out. I don't want you in there. Oops. You're messing with my visual here. I'm manhandling these flowers. Good Lord. Yeah. They're still so pretty. These ones are just trying out right there. So she went on this crazy ass quest to stop the seizures in her husband. I don't think she cared about her chicken, her dog, her daughter, or her mother, but she was obsessed with her husband, Vaughn. Okay. Now, Vaughn was a Marine. He had gotten out of the Marines for PTSD. He had been raised by his grandmother and had problems with his mother and his stepfather. His mother, Letitia, had went on to have other kids and did not adopt them, did in fact raise them. So that hurt Vaughn. But he loved his grandmother, so he found ways to cope, and kind of go on with life. After he had had the seizures and whatnot, he was starting to have some contact with his bio mom. And Dre was a social media vixen. She was on all the time, and she's amazingly talented as a makeup artist. Okay? So, she had 200,000 people just watching her makeup and her videos with her and Vonnie. And they would do therapy Sundays. So Vaughn would sometimes talk about, his troubled childhood and the abuse from the stepfather and his confusing relationship with his mother. Okay? So, when their relationship became toxic, I don't know exactly when it happened, how it went down, but ultimately, Vaughn wanted his freedom. And he started leaving her and going and staying in motels, and she wouldn't let him have any money for the hotels, even though he had his retirement from the military. She had her own income because she took the 210,000 followers that she had for her makeup alone and started her paparazzi empire. And with 200,000 of her closest friends, they all signed up to do paparazzi, and so she didn't have to, I think she had to put in $150 a month to stay active, and she was drawing a check of over $50,000 a month because she had built her downline. And she showed how to use the product. She loved makeup. Okay? She loved makeup, would do the makeup, and then put the matching earrings on. Okay? So here's this look, and look at how these earrings look, and look at how this necklace looks, right? So she was really into that girly beauty aspect of things. And people yucked it up. And paparazzi has some really cute jewelry. Very affordable. Would be great for prom jewelry, things like that, because it's nice. It's costume jewelry, but it was marketed lead-free and nickel-free, and now it has came out that it was anything but. Okay? So, Vaughn started going away, not coming home at night. Sound familiar, friends? But she wouldn't let him have any money for a hotel or anything like that. So he came home one morning and walked out to the shed in the backyard and put a rope around his neck. And she found him after he had successfully unalived himself. He did not have a pulse. She cut him down with the rope. She cut the rope. There's questions about the rope and it's tattering or not tattering and blah, 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 blah. There's a whole rabbit hole there if you want to go down that. But she listened to the directions of the 911 operator and was able to get a pulse back right at or around the time the medics were there, because the medics came and took over, and it was reported that he did have a pulse. So whether or not she did it by her own hand or the medics, I'm not sure on that detail. So, she didn't tell anybody. She was used to being online all the time. Her and Vonnie. And she would do these makeup things and make them look like, old people in love, and they'd have their little skits. And she could honestly, she could do like the clumps, like that kind of makeup. She was very talented. Probably still is. But, she lost a ton of freaking weight. She went on this alkaline vegan diet. And, it has nothing. Basically you can eat some cardboard here and then. And red onions. That's about it. She lost a ton of weight, and so did he. Now, one can argue that did the seizures and the medicine that they smuggled in from Mexico in her fupa cause him to become massively more depressed and could not deal with his PTSD? Did he have brain damage from the seizures? Who knows? All of these things, right? She wasn't online. She didn't tell anybody what had happened for like 3 weeks. And then she said that there had been an accident with Vonnie. And that he was doing fine and he was going to recover fully and blah, blah, blah. And nothing could be further from the truth, sadly. He suffered a massive anoxic brain injury. His brain was without oxygen for an extended period of time. And between 8 and 13 doctors, I believe the tally is now, have told her to take him off of life support and let him pass peacefully, as there is no hope. She believed that by spitting on him, her DNA could talk to him, and her spit tells him that he loves her and she loves him, and some word. She causes all these fights and drama in the hospital and whatnot because that is Dre. She is drama. She is absolutely yet another borderline personality disorder. They're all over. And once the parents found out, the biological parents found out that their son was probably not going to make it, the mother and the father, not married, they're not coupled, they're uncoupled at this time, wanted to go and see him. Well, not only does she say that she is his doctor, she is also his gatekeeper and did not allow the mother, most specifically, to visit him. The father and his new wife may or may not have been able to get a quick visit. I don't know. I believe that she did get security called, and I don't know if he was able to go in or not. Now, the reason why this is relevant is because this is also connected to the ass clown camel toe woman. She latched onto this and fought for the mom to be able to see Vaughn. I don't have an opinion on that. But there's a lot of carryover between the cases. Because whenever the drama is high, the ass clown parade tends to go there. So when you see things that are like Justice for Vaughn, Dre McCray, Slay with Dre, and you see me posting the videos from at Truth Seeker, that's what I'm talking about. Because somebody asked, they said, who is this Dre? What's this about? I did the video so it's in my list of videos. I need to figure out how to make the playlist so I can do that and do a Dre McCray playlist so you guys can see where that's at. Because it was like about paparazzi. So I don't remember what I titled it. But that's what that's about, and that's how these, they call them tragedy pimps for good reason, go from one case to the next, and they go for the most salacious aspect of the case. I don't see what harm it could do to let a mother hold her dying son. I have a very, very limited relationship with my bio mother. She has not laid eyes on my 3 oldest children. She's seen my 3 youngest for 15 minutes once out of their 19 years. She has never been by my side for my labors, my multiple surgeries, illnesses, marriages. Only 2 haters. Yet, when I am very, very sick, or when I'm coming out of surgery, I cry for my own mother. Not that she ever loved me or was loving, but it's a very primal need for a mother, I believe. So I don't see what harm it could bring. And I think that by her not allowing the mom, it is giving more rise to the controversy, and that's problematic in and of itself. So that's what that is about, and that's that. Now, a couple of weeks ago, it came out that Vaughn was on hospice, and people were saying, pray. And I think I even shared something that said it, but that's an old rumor I found out, because I've not heard anything else. And it was reported, I think maybe a month and a half ago, that he was put on hospice and brought to her home, which she was living in an RV, so I don't know which home, but he was there for like a week, and she was like, no, not for me, and called and put him back into a home. She took him out of the VA. She won't let him stay at the VA because she doesn't believe the VA is treating him right. She still insists upon putting her gross ass food into him, and then like she wants to control everything. He's got, a feeding tube and everything, and she just doesn't believe that they're giving him the right amount of water, so she threw this big ass twat fit at the VA, and she'll refer to it, she was like, can't a man get a drink of water around here? He had a fucking feeding tube. He's not saying he's thirsty, because he's in a coma. But she decided that she thought that his fluid intake should be more, and that he needs to do this. So she'll bitch about, his food that she has to go and bring him, and everything every day is this much, and people just still give her a ton of fucking money. She's got like a ton of Patreons and everything, and it's just like, wow. I don't understand how people give money to these, I don't know. It's time for a bite of Greek yogurt to pontificate. Yogurt I can do. What you doing, Boo-Boo? Boo-Boo's asleep down by me. And a drink of tea on that. So, before I get too far, y'all know I get to talking and I forget my important things. So, my disclaimer is that my channel is 80% fact, 20% fiction, or 80% fiction, 20% fact. You decide. My channel is for educational and entertainment purposes only. At the end of the day, I hope that I provide a teaching opportunity that helps others to put things in a different perspective and see things in a way that maybe they hadn't before, which will help them go forth into the world and see things and identify patterns of abuse that we have seen the sad outcome of, and maybe be able to change the outcome in identifying the abuse before it's too late. I do not mom shame. I do address people who are public figures and the behavior in which they have put out there, because many people see that behavior as exemplary and say that those people are their mentor and they want to be like them, and that's very dangerous, because the behavior of those people that we talk about has resulted in the loss of lives, and not something you want to model yourself after. Now, one of the biggest things, I have had a little rash of smelly twats coming in. I think it's because I was not clear, and there are no twats allowed. Okay, no twats. Truth warriors, yes. Truth warriors is what we all are, and we all should be, fighting for the truth. But if you're a twat, go watch somebody else. There's a lot of other channels out there that are very entertaining. This might not be for you. If you identify as one smelly twat, go away. Just go, okay? There are no twats on Warts Island, okay? Got it? And so from there, what else happened as the world turns here? The very, very sad case. Oh, this too. there's an arrest in the Delphi murders. And personally, I think it's because this amazing creator, True Crime Design, has worked so hard on things, and she does diagrams and notes and compares the artist rendition of the suspects to real pictures, and just breaks down this case and breaks down this case and breaks down this case. And I can't help but to think that actual detectives on the case look at creators' work such as that, and they're like, wow, she has the time to do what we don't. And that kind of makes sense, because they made an arrest in the Delphi case, and so today is Friday, or now it's Saturday, and they said that they will be doing a news conference on Monday. So at the last that I saw, they did not announce the name of the person that they arrested, and that's what the news conference will be about on Monday. So that's that. Now, let me see here. Ooh, to tie up one end, Diana McCarta, DianaMcCarta, says that she did not ever see any abuse. She did not ever see Quentin being hit, but she did observe bruises on him that she says could have been from him falling or whatever, but she herself did not witness the abuse, just saw the neglect in that he was left alone. Did you guys see the sad case of the little boy found in the suitcase? That one pisses me off because, okay, so in April, was it April, I want to say 22nd. I could be wrong. In April, nonetheless, here we are in another episode of Skanks That Shouldn't Have Bred. Out in the middle of a field in Indiana, there was this suitcase that was found. And it said, something like, welcome to Las Vegas. It had a big Las Vegas, that quintessential view on that strip where, everybody takes their picture and whatnot. Well, out in the middle of a cornfield in Indiana, April 16th, that's when. That's right. Okay, it was April 16th. So some guy just finds this suitcase in the middle of the field, and to his horror, he opens it up, and there's a little baby boy inside of it. He was not alive. This was in April, and I'm talking about October 29th. We're on October 29th, so almost 6 months ago. So this little boy, no one knew who it was. No one had reported this little boy missing. No one in the area, or otherwise, he didn't match up to any of the missing children things. He was a black male, about 4 foot tall. Really nothing, no scars, no identification. It was not in any of the missing and exploited databases. So nobody knew who this child was. And so the Washington County in Indiana built him a beautiful grave. And I might post it on my community page so you can see it. It's beautiful. But it's very sad because it says, here rests a boy that is known only to God. Because nobody knew his name. No one knew his birthday. So here's this baby who didn't matter enough to be reported missing, right? So the investigators worked really hard to find out who he was. And in the autopsy, they found that he had passed away from an electrolyte imbalance, from a viral gastroenteritis. Totally treatable. Could have, this would not have resulted in the death of a child had, when a child gets dehydrated, you go to the emergency room, you get an IV, blah, 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 right? Well, there was no trauma on this baby's body. None. So they kept trying to find, who he belonged to, who he was. And the fingerprints, I think, on the outside and inside of the suitcase are what cracked the case, ultimately. And this week there was one arrest. And now, if I'm looking at this right now, I don't think they noticed this either. But so the boy was identified to be 5-year-old Cairo Jordan. Now, he was 5 years old. And his birthday was October 24th. So the way I was looking at it is I think one of the arrests came on his birthday. Dawn Elaine Coleman, 40 years old, was arrested in San Francisco, charged with his death. And they are still looking for the mom, Dujon Ludi Anderson, who's 37, believed to be in the Atlanta area. But she travels a lot. So she's in LA, Houston, Vegas, San Diego, San Francisco. What does that tell you about mom? What kind of a person travels with another woman to LA, Houston, Vegas, San Diego, and San Francisco? Hooker. That's a hooker. That would be a hooker. So, those ass clowns should go and try and find her because they're around everywhere. They could disperse with their bullhorns and go and find the mom. Go and find Dujon Ludi Anderson. Could be in the Atlanta area. Could be in the LA, Houston, Vegas, San Diego, or San Francisco area. Now, both women are being charged with neglect that resulted in the death, and both are being charged with obstruction of justice. Now, the mom, Dujon Ludi Anderson, 37, has a very recent mugshot. She has several mugshots. And what had happened was, now that they're looking back at it, she was in that area in Indiana in April. And she was arrested, and that suitcase was in the back of the car. So she was put in jail after a high-speed chase, and she assaulted a security guard and everything. So she assaults a security guard, has a high-speed chase, all this shit, right? What does the judge do? Lets her out on her own recognizance, which meant no bail. So then she must have went from there. I'm speculating now because she had the suitcase in the back of her car. So the suitcase in the back of her car just stayed there while she was inside in jail getting meals and everything. And her 5-year-old child is in the suitcase in the back. Another sans Casey Anthony, huh? Oh, this dumb bitch flings the suitcase out on this deserted field. And, well, not deserted, but, a field. What kind of a judge allows somebody who just had a high-speed chase and assaults an officer out on their own recognizance? Don't know. So anyway, in their investigation, they found that the mother, Dujon Ludi Anderson, 37, decided that this child had a whole ass demon inside of him. There was a whole ass, big, huge demon inside of that child. She was filmed talking about that she needed to kill that kid because she had to do some killing and some healing because there was a whole ass demon in that child. She said that child was horrible and was a demon, and so she was attempting an exorcism, and that was well known. That was an accepted norm. CPS, where are you? Once again. CPS, you failed again. Ass clowns, why aren't you protesting CPS? Child Protective Services. Where were you? Did you guys see this film and think, oh yeah, well sometimes there's a whole big ass demon inside of a child and you got to do what you got to do? This was okay? Because this woman was not quiet about it. And so now that they're investigating, they're finding this. But like I say, it looks like, so he would have been 6 on October 24th. And it looks like the woman who she travels with, Dawn Elaine Coleman, 40, who was just arrested in San Francisco. It looks like she was arrested on his birthday. So, all right, Cairo, good job. That's you looking down and, these nasty, nasty bitches. And so I hope that that beautiful gravestone will be amended to put his name on and his birthday. So why aren't all of the ass clowns out there protesting this death? Why aren't they looking all over for Dejan, Dejuane, Dejan, I think that's how they say, Dejan Ludi Anderson, out of Atlanta. Why aren't they protesting and trying to find her? Why aren't they doing this? Why is it okay for her to have discarded a little boy in a field after she drove around with him in a high-speed chase, after trying to say that there was a whole ass demon in him and exorcised him and didn't take him to the doctor when he obviously was suffering from dehydration? Why is that not something that even is hitting the headlines? I mean, had any of you heard of this little boy? I mean, we have Suitcase Boyfriend, who I've talked about in the other situation, but this baby in the suitcase, in a Vegas suitcase, Cairo Jordan, have you ever even heard of him? I mean, that's a problem. That's a problem in our society. Is that, why is there one case where everybody wants to go and obsess on? And it gets all of the attention and all of the resources. Well, this just goes. That's a problem. I think that we should all remember this little boy's name, Cairo Jordan, and keep him in our prayers, because he didn't have a chance. He had a nasty skank ass of a mother, and I can't imagine somebody even forming those words. There was a whole demon inside that child. No, maybe it's because you were traveling all over hooking. You were the hooker on wheels, and you didn't parent your child. And he didn't need an exorcism. He didn't have a demon in him. He probably wasn't being fed or nurtured. You know what? And why even maintain custody of him? She could have, after she had him, if she didn't want to take him traveling with her, on the road hookering, then she could have surrendered him to any fire department at any time. No questions asked when he was a baby. They had that option in all 50 states. She could have absolutely taken him to a crisis nursery and said, I cannot do this. And just let that child live. Somebody would have adopted that beautiful little boy and given him a wonderful life. There's people out there waiting to have that opportunity every moment of every day. I'm going to put that bitch's mugshot on my community page. Share it. Share it often. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do that. And I want it shared. I want all of you to share it. So, without further ado, did you guys see Ronnie talking with Dave tonight? So sad. Now there's a little bit of bombshell information I will give in just a little bit. Hold on. But Dave is doing the work that nobody in America can figure out how to do, even ones who purport to be attorneys. Have you ever heard an attorney speak intelligently about Warts Island? Or somebody who just went to law school or whatever. Whatever the case may be. So I sit back and sip my tea and eat my yogurt. If a creator has law school under their belt, why aren't they speaking in full sentences about the possible miscarriage of justice and explaining the way that this case unfolded and whether or not it was indeed conducted to the letter of the law? Is it more important to talk about somebody's eyebrows? So, seeking the truth with Dave, and you all know that, I don't just go and follow somebody. I go and I check them out and I decide whether or not they're worth my time. And I was reluctant to go to Dave because I had heard that he was a bad man. A very, 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 very bad man that abuses women. And in fact, I have had people unsubscribe to me because I said that I was mistaken in my judgment and that I now follow Seeking the Truth with Dave. That I was remiss in my judgment, and I apologize to Dave for that. I think the man is just someone who speaks the truth. So seeking the truth, maybe Speaking the Truth with Dave is also a good moniker. Because it is very sad that somebody had to come from the land down under and swoop up and go and ask the questions that we pay people in our judicial system to do. If you look at the Watts case and you're comfortable with who's sitting behind bars, that says a lot. Because either he should not be there alone, or we should be comfortable with why he is behind bars in order to say that our judicial system is one that we support and understand and respect and fund. Because right now, we don't have the answers. And what happened to him, to Chris Watts, has so many errors that the more I look at it, the more I am perplexed. And the fact that 4 years later, and thousands, maybe even millions of people talk about it on a daily basis, says that something ain't right. So, Dave was speaking to Ronnie. Now, Dave did not just set out and be like, hey, Ronnie, why don't you come on my show? And why don't you talk? And then I'm going to dump you and write an essay and then charge a bunch of money for it. But I'm going to make it in a Kindle version so that it's easier for people to buy it. No. He got Cindy and Ronnie's phone number and he slowly built up a relationship with them and has built up the relationship enough that Ronnie and Cindy are comfortable enough to speak out and speak up. And I beg all of you to have their back. They live in great fear of being online bullied and otherwise bullied. They're probably afraid that the ass clown parade is going to come outside their home one of these days. So, if you see anybody going for them, please redirect them, report their comment. Otherwise, just don't let it happen in front of you. Don't be a part of it. So, I'm moving on to my, oh Lord. Really? It was spilling all over. I'm moving on to my glazed lemon loaf tea. And I put French vanilla creamer in it. I do 2 packs for a venti. 2 tea bags per venti, so 2 per 20 ounce. I've got 2 of them. I'm double fisting my tea here. I'm fisting myself. Doubly. Anywho. Ronnie doesn't sound like he feels very good either, and based on my personal experience, Ronnie Watts, if you hear this or somebody on behalf of him, couldn't you please tell him that he may indeed have the damn COVID too? Because I was being a COVID denier to myself because I did not want to have it because I wanted the surgery because my shoulder hurts so motherfucking bad. But you know what? At the end of the day, I have COVID and I have to admit it. And Ronnie kind of sounds like I do right now. So Ronnie, please take care. Please stay very, very well hydrated. Please take Mucinex every 4 hours. With COVID, the enemy is the mucus. It makes the mucus so thick that you can't breathe, and it takes over and just fills your whole entire body with mucus. So if you are one who can do the neti pot, please. The neti pot is your best friend. And did you know that while you're doing the neti pot, you're supposed to go, caw, 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 caw. Yep, you're supposed to do that. You're supposed to, like, sing like a bird, like, go, caw, or go, cock, 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 whichever you prefer. But doing that movement with your mouth helps to make sure that the saline, because you always don't put regular tap water in your nose, because then you're gonna get like some amoeba up there, and so you always have to make sure it's really like I use these sinus packs for the neti pot, and so it makes the water sterile. And if you do that, and I mean, you look like a freaking wad standing there over the sink. You gotta lean forward and put it in one nostril, and then lean forward and go, caw, caw, caw. Terrifying image for anybody to see. I mean, the things my husband has had to see. I mean, for the first few years, he was like, I was in the Navy, I've seen everything. And then he's like, fuck, I don't know what's wrong with you. But anyway, please, Ronnie and Cindy, if you're sick with this, please do the neti pot and please get some Mucinex. It is the only thing. And then just drink as much as you can. Because the massive amount of snot that your body makes is like, it just requires so much fluid. And if you get dehydrated, then your body backfires and starts the vomiting and the diarrheaing. I don't know why the body does that. I don't know why the body's like, hey, we're like going downhill, so like let's just join and like do this. And then the fever takes your fluids out anyway. So anyway, please get some rest. Don't fight it. Don't be an idiot like me. So Dave gave a very respectful interview with Ronnie. And Ronnie is the nicest grandpa kind of person. Like, he's just the quintessential grandpa. He's Papa Ronnie. When he went to go and see Chris, and this is what Ronnie talked to Dave about. When Ronnie went to go and see Chris, the defective detective said, be prepared to be strong. In regard to what Ronnie was going to see when he went and talked to Chris. Be prepared to be strong for what you're going to see in there. What the fuck? What? I mean, what did he, what were they preparing him for? What were they insinuating? Is that indeed part of an investigation to warn the parental unit to be strong for what they're going to see? I could see that being appropriate for if you're going into the hospital and you're seeing somebody who has been in an accident, but it was not appropriate for the situation, and just makes you wonder even more, what were they smoking? It is Colorado, okay? The air is thin and it is filled with Mary Jane. The next thing that Christopher said, that they discussed, was Christopher said, I don't want to protect her. It was very clear. I don't want to protect her. Who is her? Who is her? The defective detectives heard the word her. It is the defective detective's job in an interrogation questioning to use a tactic involving open-ended questions. A skilled investigator, and I guess that's a freaking operative word here, a skilled investigator, is not going to go and ask a suspect, a witness, something that can be given, a question that can elicit a yes or no answer. An open-ended question is something that you ask somebody else that is going to elicit a response that brings up a detail. Not only did they not ask, they didn't acknowledge it. They figured that they had their man. That they had read in a book somewhere in Defective Detective 101 that the spouse is usually the offender when the wife and the children are no longer there. And they were like, yes, it says it, so it must be. And Dave used the word Tamburglar, and I yield to the Tamburglar name because I had long said it was that Tammy was the Hamburglar because of that white and black sweater. You know, the Ronald McDonald characters in the Hamburglar. Remember, the white and black? And so Dave, apparently, in his Australian ways, saw her as the Tamburglar. Touche, Dave, touche. And I will refer to her from this day forward as the Tamburglar as well. Now, there was some mumbling between Chris and his dad that she wouldn't go to counseling. She wouldn't go to counseling. And she hurt my fucking kids. And that is when the Tamburglar white and black cardigan gained wings and it swooped in, and she, you okay, Chris? You okay? You need a hand job or something? Why don't I start with your shoulders? What would I do if I was in a terrible situation and some creepy fucking man just swooped in and started rubbing my shoulders? I'd probably backhand him because I'm not one for touchy-feelingness. But at the least, it would have made me recoil and feel very uncomfortable. Now, as you all may have seen, I had quite the debacle last week where somebody just really, really reamed my ass 5 ways from sideways and may have indeed found a positive PCR COVID test up my ass because of how far she crawled up. It informed me that I don't know anything about the law. And if I did, in fact, know anything about the law, that what Tamburglar did was a tactic. Well, I can fuck right off because I do have a bachelor's degree in criminal justice with a minor in psychology, and I'm a law school dropout, and I was raised by one very, very defective detective, and so I can tell you that it is my opinion that to go and massage the suspect in a seductive manner is not a tactic. It is not appropriate. It never has been and never will be. And I am confident in that. And if someone can say, hey, this is a tactic, go in there and start rubbing them down. Is anybody doing that to Jeffrey Dahmer? What about Green River Gary? Were they sitting there getting him all warmed up and prepped? Think about it. Not appropriate. I don't like it. It's interesting to me as to what exactly Christopher was doing in that room. Was that classified as a custodial interrogation? Was he in fact being interrogated? Was he being questioned? Was he Mirandized? Did he have to be Mirandized? Was he there under his own free will? Do we have, without the shadow of a doubt, the entire interview? And do you think for a second that they don't have another listening device underneath that table, that the old Tamburglar didn't have a frickin', little one of her iPods stuck underneath there so she could listen in and be like, hey, hubby, yeah, I'm about to get the confession out of him. I'm gonna go start massaging him sexually, and I'm gonna call you in a little bit and give you the go ahead and call the news station. So just hold, please. Calling her husband and telling him this, so he called the news. Just shitty. I don't care what you're smoking. So, as I have pointed out, Christopher Watts did indeed use the word separation. Now, there was some interference in hearing, and I couldn't exactly get it out, but I think that basically what Dave said is that in the last week that they were in North Carolina, because SW was out there for an extended period of time. 5 weeks, 6 weeks, whatever. And in that last week, Christopher went out there. And Napgate, everything else happened, right? CM dumped her like a hot potato. She decided that she needed to inform Christopher Watts that he needed to become a part of the solution, and that they were in fact going to get back together, and that he needed to read a book that was going to give him instructions on how to say yes when she said this. And in fact, she was going to write it on her hand that said, I forgive him. Or he forgives her. Something was written on somebody's hand. So, separation was heard. The separation was in that interview. The separation word was broadcast to the nation. So why, in fact, was the nation under the impression that it was this perfect suburban family living life on Saratoga Trail with 2.5 children? The daddy is the provider, the stay-at-home mom. Everything was perfect. She had just went for a little trip to go and see the grandfolks and came back, and while she was gone, he was naughty and met a new person to play house with. And he decided he wanted to play house with her more, so he just decided to go ahead and annihilate everybody and start with a fresh slate. No. Why didn't anybody else hear that word separation? They were separated. They were in a trial separation. The last time they had done the horizontal mamba was in March. They, as in Christopher Watts, not the other CM, not the other Christopher. They did it in April, but that's a whole nother story. So, one of the best pieces of advice I could give anybody was to do what I did. When in doubt, do what Tabitha Jane does. And when I was having problems with insomnia last year, I've told you this before, but, you gotta hear it again. I was watching videos. And I couldn't wake up my husband because he has to get up for work in the morning, so I couldn't, and I didn't have my iPod, my iPhones, my ear pads, or my ear things. Those things you stick in your fucking ear. Always became uncharged. So I would be listening to videos for a while, and then they'd go out, and so I couldn't listen. So I was next to my husband in bed, but I couldn't make any noise because I didn't want to wake him up. But my brain still needed to settle down. And so I was watching these videos. I was watching the Warts Island videos and not hearing anything. That is when my spidey senses said, something's not right here. Because the next day when I would go back and, listen to, and be like, okay, what was happening here? What was that? Oh. Because what I had seen was the parent that I saw love those children and interact and engage and play and love was indeed Christopher Watts. The parent in which I would have assumed had harmed them based on her coldness, spiteful, otherwise detached behavior from the children was her. When you listen, you hear her ordering them what to say and what to do. And for a more involved discussion on that, please see Neeks Peaks, Neeks Peeks. They do the best at it, really cutting that down. But also do what I did and look at those videos with your eyes. Turn the sound off. Look, watch how they look at watch how the little girls, watch how Cece and Bella look at her. Watch how they look at Christopher. Watch how they move. Look at when she tries to grab onto them. They try to climb off of her. They don't have a bond with her. She seemed like a bitchy 15-year-old babysitter. And most likely she stopped maturing at her around that age. There's something very, very teenagerish about her behavior. What was that? We don't know. I heard that this one channel that I thought that I was on, but I was mistaken, had this big bombshell, and I guess that it was because when that person was friends with Cindy or whatever, that Cindy Watts had said that SW had confided in her the night before Nutgate that SW's mother bitch slapped her and caused SW to leave the home at the age 17 or 18 and didn't talk to her mother for an extended period of time. I thought that was common knowledge. I mean, the parents were not involved in her life for a long time. There's big gaps in that. And most likely it's because they told her that, she's being a raging fucking twat, and then she'd be mad and throw a hissy fit and go and move to a different state and not talk to them until she needed them for something like free babysitting. So, I feel that Have you ever done anything where you wanted somebody to take the blame? Have you ever done something and you want somebody to take the blame desperately? Or have you ever done something and been a part of something and taken the whole blame so that others wouldn't get the punishment and you would take it for all to let them be spared? I have. I'm going to give you an example of both. All right. So, this one time in 5th grade, we had hot fudge sundaes for lunch. It was some kind of a fucking fundraiser for like the Valentine's Day dance. I don't know, right? And I think I've discussed before my food allergies and a little bit of lactose intolerance. And so I had this friggin' sundae for lunch. And it wasn't sitting well. And I got the stomach rumble followed by one of those 120-second farts. And here I was in the classroom. And it was a terrible fart. Oh, absolutely fucking terrible fart. And everybody grabbed their desks and the desks grew legs. Like everybody, there were the little single desks that you sit in. Except for when I was in my junior year and I was pregnant, I couldn't fit in one of those desks. But anyway, everybody grabbed their desks and like ran, just like scooted away from me. So I was there alone in the middle as the fartee. And I did not want the blame for that because it was very obvious. Everybody like had cleared to the outer borders of the room. My teacher did not find any humor in it. My teacher also lived across the fucking street from me and was going to tell my parents. He had no sense of humor. Even though when I babysat for him, I found all kinds of different condoms that he and the wife had. They had little watts in them using condoms and everything. So I knew all about that fuck. But was I telling anybody about these condoms right then and there? No. So you think they could have done me a solid and not, went and told my parents how I fart? No. But anyway, he had no... He was much like my step-grandfamily that did not find humor in farts. And so I looked over at my best friend and I looked at her and I was like, Sarah. And she was like, no. And I'm like, Sarah. And she's like, no. And I'm like, Sarah. She's like, And I'm like, Sarah. And I mean, I was like begging her with everything. I was like probably beet red. And probably I had this big green stink fart cloud around me. She wouldn't take the blame. She was like, no, and no. And I wanted her to take the blame so bad. So bad. Because this one was just too bad. I just, I wanted to go and blame it on somebody, right? And what's the, that's what you do with farts. You blame it on somebody else. Like, right? What's the best friend for? But no, she wouldn't take this one. No, she wouldn't. So you know what? I fucking got detention for that fart. And that is my time when I really wanted somebody to take... Everybody had to put their desks back. And it was just, everybody was like... gagging and everything. I mean, come on, it wasn't that bad. Maybe it was, but anyway. And so, now, and then the sad thing is that, because of my asshole defective detective father, that was a horribly abusive piece of shit, when my sisters would do something, my two younger sisters, one is not with us any longer, may she rest in peace. The other is a fucking weirdo, rabbit squirrel ass, Jodi Arias looking piece of fucking dog dung. But anyway, back then, I would do everything to spare them the punishment. So I would take the blame on everything because, I'd rather take the beating and, whatever. Not like I'm a sadist or anything, but I was like, I did not want them to be hurt. So I would take that. And
So when I'm seeing this interview with Christopher Watts, I am seeing him as the person who is taking the blame for something he got in over his head on. He's taking the blame because he knows worst case scenario is life without parole. He's like, I'm going to be doing it anyway, so why drag anybody else down with me? Right? I do not see him as the sole offender. Did he get into something a little bit over his head and at one time wanted to maybe hire a hitman or something? I don't know. I do not know. Or a hit woman? I don't know. Did he say something in haste about SW's twatty ways? I don't know. But bottom line is something that he feels that he needs to take the blame for. And maybe that person isn't guilty in the true sense of the word, but the whole story isn't told. And he has decided that that's an okay fate. And I don't know why. Who was she? Who was she? Now, Dave commented on the quality of the audio, and there is something really screwy about that audio. I haven't looked at this channel for a long time, but there's this creator, it used to be called Black and White TV, and then it was I Swear Kimberly, and she's very talented and took a lot of these interviews and broke down, like took away the ticking clock, took away certain other things so you could really hear clearly. And she did a great job in that. So I know that I've heard more clearly. Every time I hear it, I hear something new. Now, Coder said to Christopher, we're going to help you get out of here. We're going to help you get out of here. Now, that is sadly a tactic that is allowed. With law enforcement, they are allowed to lie. They're absolutely allowed to lie. Is it shitty? Yeah. But they can lie if they are in the process of extrapolating evidence from whatever that shit show was. Now, you want to know the bombshell tonight? You want to know it? You want to know it? Ready? Should I tell you? Should I? Okay, here we go. I can't wait any longer. Okay, bombshell tonight. There was talk of Christopher Watts getting what is called a 35C. That is when there is an additional evidence that can be brought in, that there is more of the story, blah, 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 blah. Especially since he did not have a trial. He was not given a trial by jury. Did he surpass his right to that? Yes, he did. Was he coerced? We wonder. So, I know all you guys are out there going, it's too late though. There was a statute of limitations and it was 3 years. No, my friends. I researched it. I researched it specific to Colorado as also. Here's the bombshell tonight. With a 35C, it is 3 years, right? For most charges. With the exception of a Class 1 felony. With a Class 1 felony, which is something such as murder, an offense which is indeed punishable by life in prison, LWOP, there is no statute of limitations on when the 35C can be filed. Bam. It's true. At any time, Christopher Watts decides to say, hey, here's the other side of the story. Here's what really happened. And it may be that he did it all. It may be. What does he have to lose? What does he have to lose? Okay? So, he could very easily go through there and say that he is guilty. He is guilty of all three, possibly four. I think that a good attorney could get in there and argue her own words against the health of the fetus. I really do. I think that when we see people coming at me and saying this and that and all these things and everything, well, sure. Let a good attorney go and say that shit. Right? There is no time limit on a 35C with a Class 1 felony. Or multiple Class 1 felonies. Why are people saying that there was a 3 years and it's too late? Why are people saying that? Research it yourself. Go look up a 35C. Now, go in there and say that he wants to go ahead and plead guilty, but not guilty by reason of insanity or a mental defect, or that in the flash of an eye, he was mentally incapacitated. That in a moment of rage, he lost sight of who he was. Say that those stickers were frickin' jacking him up. Who knows what was in them? Why has that not been discovered? Why has that not been brought forward? Who's out there saying there's a 3-year limit on this? Look it up. Look it up specific to Colorado. Look past where it says 3 years. Go to where it says a Class 1 felony. Look up what a Class 1 felony is. I'm telling you. Don't take anything as fact. There's this case that was in the news just this week. Lindsay Parton. Lindsay Parton. Partin. In fact. Okay. Well, Lindsay Parton has a partner. She lives on Skank Road. Oh no, I mean Shank Road in Ohio. It's by Cincinnati, by Butler County, they say. Okay. So here is one Lindsay Parton, and she is just sitting there living life with her partner, and she sold Mary Kay. What do you know? Another MLMer, right? She decided to not only do Mary Kay, but maybe do some child care on the side. So, enter neighbor, single dad neighbor. He's a single dad because the baby mama was either dead or in prison for drugs. Can't remember if she was dead or in prison. But she was a drug woman, like I say, in another chapter of Skanks That Shouldn't Have Bred. So, single dad Jason moves in, and Lindsay, selling her Mary Kay and all that stuff, wanting to get into childcare, says, oh, that's a cute little girl you have there. What's her name? Well, she's 3-year-old Hannah Weschy. Weschhe. Okay. Well, she's always dirty, got spaghetti all over her face and everything else, so she's like, oh, why don't I just, take care of her, and I'll be the mother for her. I'll babysit her. And single dad's like, I don't have much money to pay you. And he's like, I have $35 a day. And she's like, well, that's more than I'm making on my MLM. I mean, I'll make a ton of my MLM, but sure, who can't use a little bit of extra money for coffee and such, right? So, she starts babysitting this cute little girl, 3-year-old Hannah. One day, Hannah's like, fuck this. I don't want to be with this woman. Dad drops her off. She's crying, like, don't leave me, Daddy. And it's hard because we've all been in situations where sometimes the kids, cry really hard. I mean, I remember my second little boy, he just never wanted to go anywhere without me. He wanted to stay with his mama and not go to kindergarten or anything else, and had to have his big brother come in and sit with him. So, I mean, we've all been in positions like that, and we've all been in positions where we're frustrated too, and we're like, okay, I've got to go. I need to go and do this. I'm going to be late for work, whatever, right? So I'm sure the dad was like that day too, right? He's like, I've got to go, Hannah, okay? And so there it is at 6:55 in the morning, and she's crying, and she won't let up, and all we know is that he dropped her off at 6:55 a.m. At 7 a.m., Lindsay Parton calls single father Jason and says, something's wrong with Hannah. She's like unresponsive and not acting right. And you need to come back and get her because she's sick or something. And Jason's like, she was fine this morning. What went down? I don't know. Come back and get her. 7:02. The next call that Lindsay Parton makes is to 911. So between 6:55 and 7 o'clock, Lindsay was murdering Hannah. It is believed that she was shaken to death. That whatever you do, please do not ever shake a baby. Their little heads are like little bobbleheads, and their brains are in there, and they've got like jello in there, and so whatever you do, put baby in a safe place. I'm talking like baby wise. Put baby in a safe place. Put your baby in a safe place. Don't slam them down, because that's bad too. Just put them in a safe place in the crib, shut the door, go, count to 10. If it doesn't work, count to 20, count to 100, count to 300. Do not handle a baby when you are full of emotion, and do not ever shake a baby. Please send that message to anybody that you talk to, and tell your kids, because there are too many young men who are serving life in prison for shaking the babies of their girlfriends that were skanks that shouldn't have bred, that were single mamas, and then they hook up with some guy, and then they have to go to work, back stripping on the pole, and they leave the babies with these guys that are super young and have never been around a baby, so they just shake the shit out of them. They don't mean to kill them, they don't mean to be in prison for life, but they are. So please tell your children from a young age too to support the baby's neck when you're holding them, and don't ever, ever, ever shake a baby. Ever, ever. Put the baby down. Walk away. Lindsay Parton should have known better, and she didn't. And within 5 minutes, and less, they figure that she probably killed this little girl in a minute's time. A minute after that father left. Okay? She went into the interrogation and she said, I'm going to prison for life. Okay? Why am I telling you this in relation to Chris Watts? You guys are going, what the hell? I know that you have COVID brain and everything, but this is a stretch. Tabitha Jane. The reason why I'm telling you is because this is what happened. Once Lindsay Parton got her sentence to life without parole, prison wasn't exactly what she had in mind. So she was in for 3 weeks, and she's like, never mind. I didn't mean what I said. I mean that there was a bad man who came and ran into the house and did this. Maybe she like jumped out and like ran down the street and rolled back, and she went for everything. 3 weeks in, and Lindsay Parton was saying, I didn't do it. Everybody else did it. She came to me like this. because 3 weeks in is long enough to know that this is the rest of your life, what you are looking at here. And this is why I'm saying this, is that once Christopher Watts was in prison and realized he was going to be there for the rest of his life, I would have expected him, day 5 max, to have been like, hello? Is anybody listening? I'd like to tell you something, because you know what? I might be here, but you know what? There's a lot of things I didn't say. And you know what? What about that guilty but by reason of insanity or mental defect? Because I am defective as fuck. Why didn't he start saying that? Why did he start singing like a canary? Why has he been there now for 4 years and doesn't say anything? He's got to start talking. Before anybody can help him, he's got to be the one who first says he needs help. What is prohibiting him from talking? Who's he protecting? Lindsay Parton wasn't holding out for anybody else. She was like, and she went to the judge and was like, oh yeah, it wasn't my fault. And the judge was like, that's nice. That's nice. And he reminded her that she's in prison for the rest of her life for the murder of 3-year-old Hannah Wesh. Now, she spends her days taking classes at the prison, specifically for child care and development and parenting classes. Why are our tax dollars paying for a woman who murdered a 3-year-old and who is in prison for life without the possibility of parole? Why are our tax dollars paying for her to go to child care and parenting classes? These are the questions I must ask. Anyway, like I say, there's nobody that goes into prison and it just accepts this. I mean, what? Maybe there is something wrong with him. I mean, I know that when he was talking to Sherilyn Cradlecrap, they said that his IQ was very high. That leads me to believe that they did, of course, because when you go into prison, you have a psychological profile developed and you are assessed, your IQ, your global affective function, your GAF, global affective, I can't think right now. But basically it gives a profile of what kind of a prisoner you will be, kind of gives some insight onto who should be your roommate, what to look for, kind of goes in there and sees if you have a personality disorder or, something that, can be medicated or that should be watched for. Possibly person could partake in group therapy for said personality disorders, etc., etc. They do a whole evaluation for you to go in prison. That had to have been done. And what did they find? Why hasn't that? Where's Tamburglar to go and have her husband tell everybody what was determined on that? Now, mental defect, insanity, is not the same as being competent to stand trial or be a part of your own defense. So that's not even a consideration, because people are like, well, he was just fine in the courtroom when everything was being said. He didn't say anything. So that says that, he's fine. He's not crazy. We don't know what he was in that moment. We don't know what happened that night. We don't know. It's sad that his parents don't know. Even if he were just to have a meeting with them and just tell them, hey, look, this is what happened. I don't want you guys to worry. The fact that his parents are suffering and he knows it is weird. They're the nicest people. I don't think that you could find a flaw in Ronnie and Cindy Watts. I don't. I know that people have vilified them because they say, they raised a murderer or whatever. You know what? You all don't know how your kids are going to turn out. What did they do that raised him to be anything than what he was? And what he was a solid dad, a solid, good husband, who was a great provider, who went to work every day to put food on the table, I'd like to say to pay for everything, but he made a mistake of trusting her. And she went and bought a bunch of vacations so that she could go and fuck around. And that, in and of itself, if that was presented, if the jury was given all of the facts of the nasty, horrible things that she did to that man to emasculate him, a good attorney would say that he suffered from Stockholm Syndrome. He suffered from battered spouse syndrome. And that he, in fact, did snap. That any man finding out that the money that he went to put food on the table was being used to lie and deceive for his wife to go on these lifestyle getaways so that she could go and most likely fornicate with another man and possibly was impregnated by another man, possibly allegedly for the second time. What man wouldn't have snapped? What man would have been like, that's all right. Sally, what's for dinner? There are shenanigans and then there are Shannons. Okay? Shenanigans. You don't do that to people. People are like, well, then you make it sound like that she asked for it and then she's responsible for it. There's just some things you don't do. You don't dangle fresh meat in front of a tiger with your hand and not expect to come out one-armed. There's some people you just don't fuck with. You know, you get a feeling for that. And there's some things you just don't do. You all figure out some sort of way to conduct yourself in a manner in which you survive from one day to the next. That's not by acting in a manner that is reckless and has such an extreme disregard for the person who was paying for the roof over your head while you sleep at night. You know? Doesn't make sense. Anyway, now that I have this extra time, because I figured I was going to be gorked for this period of time, I am obviously just fighting COVID, and I try to stay awake, but the COVID really does take the energy out of me, and I'm sleeping a lot. So I am getting to my emails. So if you've written me an email, you might just get a response soon. It might happen. Might just happen. So, can I close by reading you a chapter in my book? Can I, pretty please? I heard you guys go, yeah, all right, teach, go ahead. Because I want to get through these books because I've got so many other good books and we're going to work on this and then we're going to be able to have these conversations and you guys are going to be in the chats and be like, well, yeah, because remember in that chapter, this said this and this is what she was doing and this is how, and you guys will be able to identify that behavior and see that that is indeed a characteristic of it or a trait of a certain personality disorder. I'm going to make you guys so smart. Yes, I am. So, I'd like to go to chapter 8. And I think I already read chapter 8, but you know what? I'm going to read it to you again because, let me see. Yeah. Let's do chapter 8. In our book, Controlling People. How to Recognize, Understand, and Deal with People Who Try to Control You by Patricia Evans. I'll put you over here on that side of the flower. How pretty. All right, so we are at chapter 8. pretending and its impact. Only in the theater can anyone else define you. In real life, if someone casts you in a role of their own making, they are playing Let's Pretend. There was a lot of pretending in that Watts house, wasn't there? Pretending that you're a stay-at-home mom. If someone defines you, even in subtle ways, they are pretending to know the unknowable. There is a quality of fantasy to their words and sometimes to their actions. Even so, they are usually unaware of the fact that they are playing Let's Pretend. They fool themselves and sometimes others into thinking that what they are doing and saying is right or true. When people make up your reality as if they were you, they are trying to control you, even when they don't realize it. When people attempt to control you, they begin by pretending. When they define you, they are acting in a senseless way. They are pretending. When people act as if you do not exist, or that you weren't on their panel, or that you are not a real person with a reality of your own, as did the Miller, they are pretending. In this subtle and often unconscious way, they are attempting to exert control over you, over your space, over your time, over your resources, or even over your life. We know that they are pretending because in actual fact, no one can tell you what you want, what you believe, what you should do, or why you should have done what you've done. No one can know your inner reality, your intentions, your motives, what you think, believe, feel, dislike, what you know, how you do what you do, or who you are. If someone does pretend to know your inner reality, like saying you're trying to start a fight, they have it backwards. People can only know themselves. It doesn't work the other way around. Since only you can define yourself, your self-definition is yours. It isn't necessary that you prove it or explain it. It is, after all, your own. Self-definition is inherent in being a person. Despite the evidence, it is difficult for many people to realize that the other person who defines them is not being rational. They feel inclined to defend themselves as if the person defining them were rational. But by trying to defend themselves against someone's definitions, they are acknowledging those definitions as valid, that they make sense when they are, in fact, complete nonsense. In Chapter 28, I will discuss ways to respond to outside definitions and attacks. Recall how May tried to defend herself when Dee told her that she really did remember her birthday? No, honestly, said May. But if she had said something else like, cut it out, she'd have been given no credence to Dee's fantasy. We know that Dee was pretending to know May's inner reality, her thinking, her memory, her mind. But what is really interesting is that Dee said, you're just pretending, to May. Again, Dee had it backwards. Millions of people try to defend themselves from abuse and describe the altercations as arguments. Are they? I think not. I see them more as a struggle to retain one's own reality when someone else has stepped into it. Understanding this is very important because it's often very confusing for everyone involved. We get into arguments and I never know why, people often say. And when I ask, what were you arguing about? The answer is usually, I don't know. It is not always easy to spot controlling behaviors because we may not believe the person who pretends to know our reality really has some right to define us. For example, myths perpetuated through generations can be taken for truth and cloud our thinking. Some myths that may prevent clear perception or controlling behaviors are, men are most logical, women are most wise. Church leaders are most holy. Of course, some men, women, and church leaders do fill this criteria. If you believe that people who define you are logical or wise, you may have been blinded to their nonsense. Without realizing it, you may be under the influence of a belief that screens the truth from you. For instance, a woman may believe that there is some way to explain to her mate that she is not too sensitive. Like he says, because she believes he's logical. When authority figures such as experts or leaders assault us with their definitions of our inner reality, especially if they have good intentions, it may seem easier to believe that they are right than to realize that they not only have it backwards, but they are also pretending. Even long-held beliefs that seem like truths can cloud our perception of controlling behaviors. For instance, a man may believe that an older brother's criticism, "You'll never amount to anything," is somehow justified, because in childhood, his older brother knew so much more than he did. Consequently, he may try to prove himself by defending himself against the criticism and changing his brother's mind, never realizing that his brother is playing let's pretend and has no right to defend him. What blinds people to the most controlling behavior is the belief that the person who consistently defines them truly loves them. One of the saddest cases I've encountered was that of a woman who believed her mate loved her so much that only he could tell her the real truth about herself. Although she was highly intelligent, as later tests proved, and an extraordinarily gifted singer, as early evaluations noted, she thought that she was not smart and had an unremarkable voice. Married at 20 and widowed at 60, she spent her later years grieving not the loss of her controlling husband, but the loss of that other life that she might have lived had she not believed he loved her. Inner certainty is hard to come by if one's own truth, one's very being, is constantly denied. As adults, we are usually most affected and influenced by assaults to our psychic boundary, whether they are couched in an attitude of righteousness, blame, or by caring by our mate or a family member. Unless we know that people are pretending to know our inner reality when they define us, other people's definitions of us can shroud the truth, cloud perception, dim the light of awareness. If we accept them, we may come to believe that what is not so is, and that what is not so is so. Most significant, we may then base our choices upon false beliefs about ourselves and find ourselves under someone else's control. Under the best circumstances, it is difficult to know ourselves, because we are all under the influence of prevailing beliefs and other people's expectations of us. These influences are greater if we have learned to discount or ignore our own personal experience. As we lose self-awareness, we lose our ability to respond to our inner needs. We may not even know what they are. I guess I do like chocolate walnut best. Every time we accept someone else's definition of our own inner reality, we set aside our own experience and so lose awareness. Eventually, we lose access to the information we would normally receive through our functions, information we would need to make choices, to understand ourselves, and to act in the world. Our ancestors needed these functions to remain alert to the dangers of the wilds. And in today's world of increasing choices, we too need all of our functions. Even with a strong sense of self, if our psychic boundary is frequently assaulted over a period of time, we may begin to feel uncertain. And in an ever-increasing downward spiral, the more we are uncertain on the inside, the more we are inclined to accept statements from the outside. Sometimes it is a long series of assaults that finally unravels one's trust in his or her own self, the source of certainty, vitality, and creativity. Although we may be very uncertain, we are not likely to be defining others if we are engaged in the struggle to know ourselves and we remain aware of our feelings and the pain of other people's definitions of us cause. An all too common outcome of lost self-trust is that having an extreme difficulty in making choices. I don't know what I should do. But if people lose touch with themselves altogether and feel no pain and disconnect from themselves, they may attempt to control others. This disconnection usually occurs in childhood if the child is constantly defined. It rarely comes about in adulthood because once we reach adulthood, truly connected to ourselves, only extreme trauma, for instance, war, drugs, or torture, can break that connection. The consequence of one person's disconnection, if extreme and long-term, can affect a great many people. Indeed, oppression, prejudice, and violence all have something to do with disconnection. Of course, not all people who feel beside themselves are oppressive, and not all people who are beside themselves are all the time. However, when people are oppressive, they are usually attempting to control only one particular person or group. To the oppressed, coping with this behavior is extremely difficult. No one else seems to notice what is going on. We have seen how some people pretend to know our inner reality, and how their declarations about our inner reality are really assaults. We have explored how these assaults can, if taken in, momentarily dislodge or disconnect us from ourselves, leaving us vulnerable to another's attempt to control us. What happens when people are assaulted over years and end up with little or no awareness of their inner worlds, when they are, in effect, disconnected? And how pervasive is the problem of disconnection? Let's find out in the next chapter. Okay, so are you all screaming out what my brain is screaming here? When I read this, if people lose touch with themselves altogether, they feel no pain, they disconnect from themselves, they may attempt to control others. Shanann Watts. This disconnection usually occurs in childhood if the child is constantly defined. Mama Ruse to Shanann. It rarely comes about in adulthood because once we reach adulthood, truly connected to ourselves, only extreme trauma, war, drugs, or torture can break that connection. We know that SW was not in a war. She was not a victim of trauma. She was not addicted to drugs that we would associate with something like that. We suspect, it is alleged that she did have a propensity for the opioids. We know that she was not tortured. So what we can say here is that she became a person who attempts to control others because she was defined by somebody else. Her mother, in fact, defined her. We know that there is a problem with the relationship that she had with her mother, that she, in fact, did confide something to that effect to Cindy Watts the night before Napgate and Nutgate. Okay? We know that her mother and father were not part of the early childhood of Bella. Okay? When we talk about somebody who defines others, I think that SW is the poster child for that. She did it with her children. Oh, well, Bella's sick. Bella can't do that. Bella can't jump. Bella's not walking right. Something's wrong with Bella's leg. Bella is always sick. So, what did Bella in fact start to act like? That she was always sick, that her leg hurt, that she could not in fact jump on the trampoline with her sister. That even something as simple as squirting a squirt gun needed to be absolutely and 100% controlled by her mother sitting on a chair, sitting her fat duff on a chair, controlling and telling her where to squirt, when to squirt. Fuck, let those kids run out in the sprinklers and give them squirt bottles and let them run and have fun, and then you can sit there and peck on the phone all that you want. But no, her need to define everybody in that household was stronger. Why? Because she was in fact defined by somebody else. Those definitions of one SW are still a part of our society to this day. The way that her mother defined her is what the narrative is right now. And who does that narrative serve? It doesn't serve somebody who's serving a life sentence in prison. But it may serve somebody who just got an awful nice outdoor kitchen with a wood fire pizza oven. Right? Follow the money. And then you'll understand why the narrative is. Remember that narrative that, oh yeah, give him a boy and then he'll stay. Where did that begin? Where did it become that it was common knowledge that the Watts were expecting a boy? Because there is nothing in medical fact that shows that the baby that she was in fact carrying was a boy, nor was the pregnancy advanced enough without blood testing that the sex could be determined. But it was being defined that Christopher Watts wanted a boy. So therefore, he was happy. No, he wasn't. He was not happy. What did she define Cece as? This out-of-control ball of energy that she just couldn't get anything done with. And thank God that there was this MLM product that she could slap on her arms and hands and her husband and anybody else who was near, that she could get to pay for a silly stick or two, that they could in fact be around Cece too, because God, that kid just never sits still long enough. Why not sit down and read a book to that kid? Why not give that kid some finger paints? Why not give that kid some Play-Doh? Why not have a little kiddie pool in the back and let the kids play in it? Why not take the kids to the biggest, highest climbing structure that you can find, then let them play all day? Why not take them to a water park that's public? There's plenty of them in those hot areas and those master plan communities, of which there are several around in Saratoga Trail. Why not let them run, climb, tire themselves out, instead of sitting there acting like, oh, well, one's so sick and, feeble, and the other, well, it's just out of control, but thank God I can put this product on me so that I can become a good mother to it. What about if they want to sit there and play with the makeup and whatnot, because that's what you're focusing on? You call them a thief, a monster? How do those labels play out to little girls when they look at themselves in the mirror? And all that they've heard is that they're a thief and a monster. Sick, feeble, out of control, ball of energy that the mother has to take a substance in order to tolerate? Is this normal? No, it's not. It is abhorrent behavior. And it is not something to mentor yourself after. And with that, my friends, I will close. Food for thought. Thank you for listening.